Thank you for watching Resource Talks. My name is Antonio, and I know you might not be able to tell by the wind, but I'm in Kazakhstan.
And more specifically, I'm in the Pavlodar region of northeastern Kazakhstan, about a 3-hour highway drive from the capital, Astana. Although I've been on the road so much this year that I now measure distance in milligrams of caffeine, and I've had at least 800 today, so the road only felt like about 5 minutes. But I'm here with Arras Minerals, and I'm looking for copper porphyries, as one does on the weekends. Now, I've only got 2 days on site, though, which in exploration time is just enough to look at some alteration, nod thoughtfully at a geophysical anomaly, pretend to know what I'm looking at, and try not to ask too many questions about when the assays are coming, although I doubt I'm going to succeed in that. Now, the plan is simple, though. Meet the team, talk rocks, roads, politics, maybe even economics, if everyone's still awake after talking to me for 15 minutes. And then we'll head into the field. We'll look at one of the biggest coal mines in the world as well. Then we'll lick some rocks, hopefully no coal rocks. We'll look at a drill rig, and then I'm being told I'll get to see almost 100 kilometers worth of core in a shed. So hopefully it's a big shed. And finally, I'll be doing the only thing I'm good for, which is being annoying. And I'll be asking Tim how he plans on making me some money, and if this could turn into something that actually pays off, ideally before my coffee runs out, although I don't think there's really a risk of that. Now, as always, before any of that, though, please pause the screen and read the disclaimer that's on there, because there's all sorts of conflicts of interest that you should be aware of, including the fact that I've been compensated by the company to come down here and produce this video, as well as I personally own shares of Arras. Exploration is a tough, high-risk business, so this is intended only for experienced speculators, and you have to do more research on setterplus.ca, as well as talk to a professional licensed financial advisor before taking any decisions, because nobody here is your financial advisor, and the conversations in here will be general and impersonal in nature, including forward-looking statements. If you don't understand or agree with 100% of all of the warnings shown on your screen, you shouldn't consume this content. If you need more information, which I think you do, please head over to the last portion of this video for a more in-depth warning. That all said, the first question I have is, why are we here in the first place? And is the steppe really a prospective place for copper porphyries?
Yeah, so we first came to this part of Kazakhstan due to an option to joint venture, or option to purchase actually, the Muskoga project, which is one of the porphyries within our land package. And that was a project that came to me through geologist friends. We were looking around for a new opportunity. We had a project in Mexico that was under a blockade, and so when we saw this opportunity with Muskoga, we jumped on it, got on the ground, and then very quickly realized that this was an area of the world that hadn't had a lot of modern exploration and had huge potential. So it was really by good luck and chance that we first came to Ekibastuz, and then very quickly realized the potential of the place and expanded from there.
Everyone's used to 75 IQ thinking when it comes down to me, so I'll give you some of that here as well. But driving up here, it's very flat. And I thought porphyries, you can only find them in pointy places with large mountains. Why would a porphyry be here?
Well, it's a good observation. The porphyries here are old. We're looking at around 450, 460 million years old. So they were pointy once upon a time. What's happened, of course, is through the millions of years of erosion and ice ages, it's basically planed it off to create this, what we now know as the steppe.
What would that, so 400, what's that relative to the Rockies and BC porphyries? How old are they?
Well, they're much younger. So, the oldest porphyries in the Rockies are probably around 60 million years. And then you get as young as 20 million years. So this is, the belt of rocks that this is located in, if you think was probably like the Rockies at one point, and you've basically squished a giant ocean and accreted all these rocks and created the environment we have today.
What does that mean for you? When there's older versus younger porphyries, how does a porphyry here differ from a porphyry in the Ring of Fire or BC or whatever?
Well, fundamentally, in terms of how we explore for it, nothing changes. It's the same approach: geophysics, geochemistry, and good geology. Because these are older porphyries, it stands to reason they've been exposed to more faulting and stresses over time. But equally, it also stands to reason that this is obviously a very stable part of the world. So a lot of tectonics actually hasn't happened in this area for quite a long time. So how it changes, it doesn't really. It just means we've got to be cognizant about potential faulting and folding in the area, and obviously piece that together.
Do you feel like you properly understand the structural architecture now, or is there more work to be done?
Oh, there's always more work to be done. I think we're starting to get a much better understanding. One of the challenges of working here is there's not a lot of rock outcrop, and so a lot of your structural interpretations are coming from magnetics or geophysics and geochemistry. So you infer a lot of structure. But as we drill more and as we sort of understand the rocks a little better, we're starting to get together a pretty good understanding of the architecture. But that's a job that will never be done. You can always be better.
You're thinking multiple mineralizing events, as far as I understand it, too. So making it a more complex structural architecture as well. Does that make it more complex to actually drill through the rock?
Well, faulting, if it's recent faulting, it can make the rock quite crumbly, and that can be difficult for drillers to get through. But that's the same everywhere in the world. I've worked in South America, and if you're drilling through big recent faults, you'll always have problems with that. But in terms of the actual mineralizing geology, the multiple phases, just that would have happened at the time of mineralization, and the multiple phases is ideally what you're looking for, because as we can determine from other porphyries from around the world, the most productive, richest copper porphyries always have multiple periods of mineralization going on, and that's definitely what we see here.
It is a pretty large land package that you've got, though. So if your porphyry thesis works the way you expect it to, would that mean having multiple porphyries across your package?
That's right. I mean, again, if you look at some of the big porphyry terrains around the world, porphyries usually occur in clusters. It's quite rare to have just one porphyry in an area. What you tend to find is multiple porphyry centres, and that's controlled by structure, which goes back to your earlier question: how well do you understand the structure? And so for us, the approach is try not to get too clever about how you sort of draw up the geology. You use good geology combined with geophysics and geochemistry, and what you're really looking to do is just match all three on top of each other to create the best project you can.
Does geochem work for you given the cover, or well, it probably works, but how well does geochem work for you given the cover that you're dealing with?
It's hit and miss. So where we've got recent cover, so quaternary cover, I'll just take a step back. So we've been refining using soils as our main prospecting tool. So we've got a team that just goes out and we just absolutely smash an area with soils. So last year we took 55,000 soil samples. And then we've got a production of Niton or XRF guns that are analysing the samples as they come in. So you're almost getting real-time data. And when we pick up an anomaly, we then send the geologists out to look at those anomalies in the field, and can they find rock outcrops, and can they find the reason for the anomaly as it appears. But going back to what you were saying about the cover, the recent quaternary cover is not well mapped and not particularly well understood. So rather than try and get too cute and pick these areas that may or may not represent quaternary sediments, we just sample the lot. And then what we tend to find is you'll get dead zones, and that typically is where you've got your cover, and then you'll get anomalies, and that's where you've got weathered basement rock at surface.
If this all works out, your targeting technique is right, the setting is right, and everything works the way you hope it to, how big does it get? Like if you had to publish an exploration target, how big would that be?
Well, I mean, the way you really answer that question is you look at the belt, and you look at existing deposits and have a look at how big they've got. So we're in the very end of what's called the Central Asian Orogenic Belt. And in my opinion, well, number one, that's the largest geological feature on the planet outside of an ocean. And it's probably the last great porphyry belt that really hasn't been explored with vigour. But when you look at the types of deposits that are in there, you've got Oyu Tolgoi, which lots of people know about. You've got a 20 billion tonne porphyry called Almalek, which is actually the largest gold deposit in the world. And then you look at projects around where we've got our licenses, like Boshakol. That's a billion tonne porphyry, probably going to 3 billion tonnes at some point. So in terms of the type of, or the scale of the deposit we're looking for, I think if you use those proxies, that's what the potential is. So 1 to 20 billion tonnes.
Are there analogs to this belt when you look at something in the Ring of Fire or South America or something that you can kind of talk to me about so that I can better wrap my head around it? Because there's not, you really only mention a few, so there's not really many porphyries in this belt as far as I understand it, but are there analogs to it?
Yeah, I think the lack of porphyries is a reflection of the lack of exploration, modern exploration that's gone on. So there are lots of smaller showings, if you like, but these really haven't been followed up with modern exploration. So, but the analogue is very much the west coast of the Americas. I mean, it's the exact same environment, both in scale and deposit type. So, particularly focusing on Chile and Peru would sort of be, what I would liken this to.
Well, when you give me those things as comps, what's the analog to? Is it size or grade, or size and grade, or operating costs, or what does it relate to?
I think size is a comp. We tend to find the deposits here in Kazakhstan are lower grade. So if you look at Boshakol, that's a 0.33 copper porphyry. However, what makes those porphyries viable is there's what we call the Kazakhstan cost advantage. So, you've got 2 cents a kilowatt hour, you've got an educated, competent workforce, You've got incredible infrastructure. You would have seen the roads and rail and power. And all of that goes in to create Boschakol as a tier one cost producer. You know, mining costs are $1 a ton. So even though it's lower grade, say, to what you might find in Chile, you know, Los Filos is a good example of that. You actually make just as much money here because your input costs are much less.
So what does the profile have to look like of a deposit for it to actually become a mine here? Like, what were you thinking in terms of size by grade? What does that look like?
I think to justify the cost of building a major porphyry deposit or the mill, you know, that's $1 billion or $1 billion capex on that. So you've got to be looking at least a 15 to 20 year mine life. So in terms of a size, that's, you know, 500 million to 1 billion tons.
What's your favorite target to make that happen? If you had to draw, because you have almost 3,000 square kilometers of land. If you had to drop everything and keep one thing, what do you keep?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm biased by this because, you know, our Alamus project and our Muskoka project are the most advanced. So that's where we've got the most information. So I think Alamus would certainly be the pick of the bunch. And, you know, it's at that very exciting stage of where we're in discovery. So we've put the discovery hole in of 570 meters at 0.7 copper equivalent. Now it's figuring it out. What's the orientation and the metrics of the actual deposit itself. So
I was going to ask why not Imandai, because that looks interesting to me as well. But there's less work on it. Is that the only reason, or?
Yeah. So Imandai has all the ingredients. It's in the same set of rocks as Alamus. It's got the same geochemical signature, big copper soil anomalies. When we do see the occasional outcrop or historical pits that have been dug in the area, we're seeing lots of copper coating the rocks, but there's no drill hole into it yet.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about metallurgy as well here, because you mentioned 0.7% copper equivalent. What's that grade made up of?
Yeah, so it's roughly, in terms of value, 50% copper, 50% gold.
There's moly in there too, though, right?
There's a flick of moly and some silver in there as well. But the prime metal contributors are copper and gold, which, you know, I have to say I don't mind that. You know, if gold keeps going to the moon, we'll become a gold company with a copper credit.
Yeah, you can keep changing it from Arras gold to Arras copper every other year, and maybe one year it's going to be Arras moly. When are you going to do some wet work, though? When are you going to put some numbers to recoveries, or looking over at your neighbors here in the region? What are they getting in terms of recoveries?
Yeah, so, I mean, recovery at Boschakol, it's a standard crush, grind and flotation, and they're in the 80 to 85% range in terms of recovery. You know, I'm a big believer you do metallurgy early on, but not too early. There's no point in spending money on metallurgy until you know you're onto something. So I would expect post this year we'll have a much better view as to what Alamus actually is and how big it might be able to get. And then I think, you know, sending some preliminary samples for met work would make a lot of sense.
I think we've been through a lot here. What do you think about, though, when you wake up in the middle of the night and it comes down to geology? What keeps you up at night?
Well, I mean, there's always exploration risk, which, you know, I think is inherent to every project. So I think, you know, from an exploration point of view, that's the main technical risk, and you you can only handicap that through good work, good team on the ground, and making sacrifices to the geology gods. In terms of other risks, Kazakhstan obviously is in a neighbourhood. It shares a border with Russia and China. And considering the current state of the world, that's obviously a factor. But equally, I tip my hat to the Kazakhs. They are excellent diplomats, and their modus operandi, I think, is to keep trade with all the major blocs. So, they have to trade with China, they have to trade with Russia. They've got very strong ties to Turkey. And then, if you look at their ties to the West, 50% of Chevron's revenue comes from Kazakhstan. 20% of Glencore's revenue comes from Kazakhstan. And then, you've got all the big Western mining companies coming into the country with Rio, First Quantum. You've got the BHP Explore projects that were attributed last year. So, I think the Kazakhs are doing a great job of keeping it open to the world, as opposed to getting involved in regional fistfights.
A New Zealander, a Kazakh, and a Chinese, or no, let's say a Russian and a Chinese walk into Kazakhstan, who gets treated best?
Definitely the New Zealander.
You'd say that, wouldn't you?
All right, so we've heard the geological case, and we'll talk more about the rocks, and we'll go in the field and look at the rocks as well later on. But I also want to know if there's enough infrastructure here to support it all.
Well, we've got the advantage here that it's pretty flat. We're 200 to 300 meters above sea level. So, unlike I think most or many parts of the world where you're looking to develop resources, a lot of the easy places have already been sort of tackled. And you might be, high up in the Andes, or you're in the middle of jungle, or you got to put, roads in for kilometers and kilometers. And it's one of the things that really stood out, I think, when we first came here 3-4 years ago. As you've seen here over the last sort of 24 hours, we're in a mining area. The world's 5th largest coal mines here. We've got copper mines, we've got fast-producing gold mines as well. And so what's been established is not only the 4-lane paved highway from the capital city to come out, but then you've got heavy rail infrastructure, you've got high voltage power. 40% of the country's power actually is generated from right in and around here. So you've got lots of high voltage power lines that are sprinting all over the country from here. You talk to anybody in the country that you're up in Ekibastuz, is where we're sitting here today, and they're like, oh, that's up in the mining region. So it's definitely something that I think stands out. And, unlike, as I said, a lot of parts of the world where you're trying to develop things, you're looking at it through the infrastructure lens. It comes with costs, challenges. Here, you just kind of tick the box and move on. So.
I think the best part about Ekibastuz is the way Tim pronounces Ekibastuz in the first place. But another good part about it is indeed the power lines. That's something that I was meaning to ask you when I was preparing for the interview at home. I was like, oh, I gotta ask, are there power lines? But it's kind of hard to ignore them when you come by. Now, some of them are big ones, some of them are smaller ones. What's that? What I'm really wondering here is, okay, there's power lines, but is it going to be big enough power lines to support a mining operation?
I think, it's some of the highest voltage power lines in the world here, in fact. And, even as you get out into the steppe and you go and visit some of the projects, you might be hard pressed to see anything in terms of buildings. You might be just coming off the paved road and you're on kind of a dirt track. There's not really much to see, and then you see a power line crisscrossing in the distance. And in fact, it's a way that you can kind of calculate distance that you're seeing across the steppe as you count power lines. I think they're about 400 meters apart, some of the bigger ones. So depending on how many you can count, it gives you a sense if you're looking 20 or 30 kilometers away.
Yeah.
From that perspective, I think it's something that is well understood, and much of that sort of infrastructure has been built up over the last 60 years. I mean, going back to the Soviet period, for sure.
Is it reliable power? Where does it come from?
Yeah, so the power generation's right here in this area in Pavlodar. As I mentioned, right now in the country, the majority of power that's generated in Kazakhstan still comes from thermal coal. But they are migrating that. They've started to migrate towards gas. They produce a lot of gas in the western part of the country. There's actually a fairly significant gas pipeline that comes across, and in fact 2 years ago they built a spur over in our Boshkal South area. It went through there, not far from the Boshkal mine. And then even more recently in December of this year, there was a national referendum that the country undertook around also migrating towards nuclear, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's the first in the world in terms of producing uranium, the world's largest uranium producer. And that was approved actually overwhelmingly. So, one would expect that over the next, 10 years or so, you'll start to see infrastructure that will be put in place for power generation from nuclear as well. But currently right now, it's predominantly thermal coal. And as I mentioned, I mean, a kilometer from here, we saw yesterday the world's 5th largest coal mine, established in the 1950s and still has, I think, roughly about 100-year reserves. So these are big deposits.
Right. Would this power cost here? Do you have an idea of when it comes down to industrial power, what they're paying for it?
So, yeah, I mean, again, that's one of the advantages. The Kazakhstan cost advantage, I guess, is one of the things we talk about here, where your barrier to sort of entry to find mineral deposits that are potentially economic is much lower here than in many parts of the world. Again, we're at 250 meters above sea level. The incremental power cost is somewhere around 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And so that obviously brings your overall cost to run a mill, for example, your processing facility, and that's what Boshkal, which will be over in the vicinity of later today, and we'll see it. I mean, that's what they enjoy is that lower cost power, and also your energy inputs. Running the trucks, for example, we don't see the same sort of taxes that we would see in the Western world. So, to fill your truck up with diesel here is 45 cents a liter.
Wow,
a lot cheaper than what you'd get in Europe.
They're selling me on it. I checked the real estate prices too. So I think the office, or where kind of your townhouse. How many rooms is that? And I think you tell me you pay like $1,000 a month or something like that.
Again, so in this town, and when Tim and the team, when we got established here about 3-4 years ago, we've got a great spot here. It's effectively a house. All the geologists, we all stay here when we come. So 6 or 7 of us can sleep here. We've got the main, what would be the living room, set up as such, for our office, so we can all work here with internet, etc. Got a spot for a barbecue and a backyard to grow vegetables in the summertime, and yeah, that costs us about $1,000 or $1,200 a month. So again, it's your dollars go a long ways here, and ultimately it's not fancy, but it doesn't need to be, right? It's comfortable, and it works well.
You're mentioning the summertime, which reminds me to ask you about water, because right now we've got plenty coming from the sky, but that's not typical for the summer. I mean, things seem pretty dry. Kind of driving through the town and everything yesterday, you could see it, that things seem pretty dry. How's water availability?
Yeah, so it's kind of a combination here. I think the Boshkal operation draws out of a local canal off of a major river that's about an hour and a half east of here, Irtish River. You've got a lot of lakes that are, spread around as you drive around the steppe as well. And then, of course, underground aquifers as well. I mean, there's been some hydrological work that was done earlier on, well before we arrived, testing that as well. So, in the summertime, we're getting rain right now, but as you get in the middle of the summer, it can often be quite dry. Of course, in the wintertime, you've got snow cover. It's much like the prairies of Canada, where you get, snow cover, and then as that snow melts, things get soft, the lakes fill up. But yeah, it's kind of a mixture, I guess.
Yeah. Driving over here on the highway from Astana, you can see rail, you can see trains passing by. What kind of trains do they have the capacity to carry concentrate, essentially, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And in fact, at Boshkal, for example, they ship their concentrates out and they're smelted in other parts of Kazakhstan or in Uzbekistan. And the Kaz Minerals folks, I think, are also in the process right now of building additional smelting infrastructure over the next 3 to 4 years. As well. So no, the heavy rail, this is one of the things I think that the Soviets invested a lot in, was infrastructure, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so yeah, it's heavy rail. Having said that, you can also take a passenger train from Astana out to Pavlodar, stopping in Eki-Bastuz to come out. It's not a fast train like you'd be used to in Europe, but it's slow and steady. And I know sometimes the guys will actually take that, through the winter time. If the roads are, slippery and you get wet out conditions, they'll hop on the train and come out. So.
Winter time you mentioned, so we might as well go from summer into winter. What are the winter conditions here? Do you get permafrost and tough drilling, tough operating? Because again, we were out yesterday, a lot of wind. If it's minus 30, I can imagine it's tough living out there. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, again, think Canada, right? Like we're at the same latitude here as we would be in, good parts of Ontario or Quebec or Alberta. The summertime, it's the same flowers in the flower boxes. It's the same sort of trees and growth that you have here. Wintertime, though, for sure. I mean, it can be cold. It doesn't inhibit. We, in the early, first couple of years, we drilled right through the winter. There's no problems. Having said that, conditions are always going to be a little bit slower. But I think, the Kazakh drilling contractors, they're hardy folks as well, like we are in Canada, and you dress for it and try and protect yourself in some cases, I guess, from the wind. But yeah, it's the only time you kind of have to be a little bit maybe a little bit more conservative is just in the spring after the snow starts to melt and it gets soft and muddy. You don't want to be cutting up the step. But that's the same, what you call in breakup, in Canada as well. But it's relatively a short period here.
It doesn't influence pipeline stability or anything like that gets your energy to you, or the stability of the roads or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
It's much like Canada, right?
Yeah. What about, actually driving through the package yesterday has rendered a lot of my questions here pointless, because I was thinking, what about space? Like, where do you put your waste rock would be my question. Well, you see the coal mine and they've got waste rock to build mountains with.
It's, I think, from past experiences and working in other countries where you're always kind of looking at how you're going to manage challenges, particularly when it comes to populations, real estate, acquiring land, these sorts of things when you're looking through the lens of a project that potentially would be a development. And again, you only have to spend a few hours out here and kind of look around, and you get a really good sense that, like, if there was a better place to be mining, like, you'd be hard pressed to find it. It's already happening here. I think one of the big differentiators for us and our experience here in Kazakhstan has been not only the support from the government, but just the understanding. They recognize that we're out trying to discover things and move things along, but they're very, they're always asking, so when are you going to start building the mine? Sort of thing. It's like, whoa, and so you don't get that in a lot of places. And absolutely, when you're out, you're hard pressed to find, even significant sized towns, really, as far as where our projects are. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, I think, and if and when we're successful on identifying a deposit that potentially would be a mine, you're not trying to struggle to figure out, okay, well, can we acquire the land? What are we going to do with this village? Do we have to move this? Which is fairly common in a lot of parts of the world now, and it's just not a hurdle that we see as being a major impediment.
I understand this is out in the future, and hopefully later in other conversations I'll be able to understand how far in the future it might be. But if this becomes a producing asset, are you going to have enough skilled labor? How big is this town, and are there skilled miners here?
Sure. I think it's, again, one of the advantages that Kazakhstan has. There's numerous geological and engineering schools here, and in fact, every year over the last 2 to 3 years, we've spent time out in Semey, which is in East Kazakhstan, and recruited some of the team members that you've met actually went to school out there and are now working for us here. Again, with the operating mines, the coal mines, the VMS, the copper porphyry mines that are in the area, and also the country itself as being a mining country, it's actually quite an attractive and well-respected profession. So, yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. The town of Eki-Bastuz is about 100,000 people here, and really it's established on the back of mining. So again, it's one of the competitive advantages, and you don't have to kind of explain to people what it's all about. I mean, it's part of the blood here.
Now, even if the rocks end up working out, and even if there is infrastructure to support a mining operation, mining is not only about rocks and roads. Matter of fact, most of the times it's just about rocky roads. That's a different point altogether, though. And so, as cliche as this may sound, in large part, mining is about people. That's why now I'm in Astana, which is the capital city of Kazakhstan. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from Arras's project, and I'm here to meet with Said Sultanov. He's with Aurora Geophysical Services, and Said's worked or dealt with really with the Kazakh government for decades now, but he's also worked in the West. He's went to school in the West, and he's worked in Canada and so on. And so I'm kind of hoping that he knows both worlds essentially and can talk to me about the social situation here, as well as the government permitting corruption and other stuff, maybe some of the topics that are not as widely discussed out there. So let's go and talk to Said. Said, let's kick it off by talking about the government here and what mining means to the government. I mean, I see this big map behind you that kind of shows all the occurrences of minerals. So it seems like there's a lot of it in Kazakhstan, but does the government care about mining?
Oh, of course. I mean, mining is the essential part of the economy of Kazakhstan, and as you can see, it has been the legacy of mining has been here for the hundreds of years, and as a result, we have today is a big interest of international major companies coming to Kazakhstan to explore. But the one thing that we may perhaps lack are the, let's say, elephant discoveries, and this is what the government is right now. Trying to stimulate exploration, and in this sense, that's why a new mining code has been introduced based on the West Australia mining code.
When you say stimulate exploration, what does that mean? Does it mean, like, is there free money to be had, or what does that look like?
I wouldn't say free money, but it's the ability to acquire licenses. Like back in the old days, it was not possible to pick up exploration license, or you had to go through a quasi-government companies or state-owned companies, and they would take 25% share. Essentially, you would ask for, it's like, excuse me, but this is just the exploration stage. So government has abolished this and introduced a new concept, first come, first serve. So therefore, as of today, like, there are over 3,000 new licenses have been issued, and as a result, we see probably more than 10 companies out of the top 20 in the world that are right now actively exploring in Kazakhstan.
How transparent is the process? Like, if I, for example, would have started a company and came here applying for a license, am I going to be able to follow through with the process, or is it kind of you give it to the government and it's kind of in their hands? They decide what happens, but you really have no visibility over how the process works.
No, actually, the process is very easy, and there isn't much of the government involvement as such. I mean, you don't have this man-to-man interaction in these days. Like in terms of digitization and let's say the jurisdiction, today in Kazakhstan you can come over yourself or your company. You can register a company on Astana International Financial Center. That's according to UK common law that gives you the comfort. And with that company, open up the bank accounts and apply for the exploration license all online. And you would track your license online. And let's say on average, it would be approximately about 2 months before you get your license. And this would be without actually going or kind of seeing any kind of government representatives. And as a result, we see so many licenses are being acquired.
That's so just basically from desktop work to me drilling, 2 months.
I wouldn't say to drilling right away, because I mean, once you have let's say acquire the license, you need to come up with an exploration plan. Exploration plan needs to be approved by the ecological and whatever the local area, local community hearings as well with the local Akimat. So in other words, before you get to drilling, and that's again, let's not forget that Kazakhstan has winter season, so therefore you need to start to plan your field season ahead of time. But like, for example, as we are right now in May, this is like the field season has started. Everybody's out in the field, as you see. Like, we're right now at the Aurora office, it's quiet. It's majority of the people, it's not because it's a holiday, but it's because they're in the field working.
I thought you just liked having a large office for yourself. What about expropriation risks? I mean, what if you go through that process, you go through exploration, you find something, is there a risk of the government or anybody knocking on your door and saying, hey, we're taking that, you can't do anything about it?
That's why UK common law has been introduced here as part of this move to attract foreign investors, and as a result it has been quite successful, I thought, and so far we haven't heard any of the big cases where government has expropriated any kind of licenses or deposits. However, there were cases of such, let's say, in the past, that's over 10 years ago. But these were the cases which some of them are debated in the international hearings, but the most of them is that you got to see, did they apply like all those environmental laws back then? I mean, so therefore these are old cases to comment. But in terms of the new licenses, I haven't seen a single case yet. Because on most part of them, these are actually the companies themselves are trying now to see that if the ground is not prospectful, and they would go through the process of surrendering the ground. And this is where it's one of those cases where government wasn't ready as such that the investors would pick up the ground, do the work, and then start surrendering. Because the mechanism of surrendering the ground is also not so simple, because you have to, again, make sure that all the environmental kind of repercussions or any damage, if it has been done, it has to be carefully analyzed, not only by the local government over there, but various other bodies as well. So it's a bit of a process.
So when, you know, we from the West look at some of the horror stories, if you will, with some of the neighbors, like what happened with Sintera in Kyrgyzstan a while back, like this is not similar. So it's different here.
Of course. I mean, Kazakhstan is the most successful, let's say, economy in Central Asia. Second of all, I think we are the most that attracts all the foreign direct investments. And in terms of the mining and the oil and gas industry, we have been working with such investors since the independence, since the 90s, right? So that's why we have this long-standing, I think, credibility. As for the Kyrgyzstan case, I mean, if you, let's say, look deep into this, because, for example, I know that case quite well, and I think in many cases, like, there is an ecological issue to that, which is quite a serious issue, which needs to be investigated further, and only then certain decisions need to be made, because potentially that could damage the Isiku region and potentially can hurt south of Kazakhstan, because it's located in the mountains, while underneath it all this cyanide has been. So, but I don't want to get into that, but it has its own, let's say, two sides to that story. But nonetheless, that mine is a world-class mine. I mean, it was mined since the 90s. I think they have extracted nearly 12 million ounces of gold out of the Kumtor mine, and it's still producing. And today, it's like it belongs to the state, but the state is, with that revenue, is doing something more to develop the exploration business as such in Kyrgyzstan as well. Because exploration in Central Asia, this is something that's required. I mean, to the state, they have a debate where it's like, well, we cannot wait forever for international investors to come. What if they don't? Or they'll come or they'll leave. But they know that example of the Soviet Union, when the state just went and just explored everything and put so much of the state budget's money into exploration.
The ecological stuff that you bring up is important to me, because if we look at the map today, or we look at a map from 60, 70 years ago, there's one sea less on this map, where there's also two rivers disrupted and whatnot by supposedly the Russian activity down in the south. So there could be large ecological challenges if things are not done properly. Looking at where Arras is up in the north, or let's call it the northeast, how is it from an ecological perspective, or ecological challenges and risks?
The Pavlodar region where Arras is located, it's an industrial region, and quite a lot of industrial companies are operating there right now, and there are future, let's say, plans for industrial development over there. Given that the mining town of Ekibastus, it has been there, I think, for about 80, 70 years, I mean, and the kind of the locals, they are involved one way or the other in the mining industry, because they have a Bagatiri coal mine over there, which is also like the gigantic coal mine over there. So from the ecological point of view, yes, the law has become stricter, but nonetheless, we as Aurora have been engaged in talks over the environmental issues with the local communities over there. Overall, the local community kind of supports the development of the industrial part of the Pavlodar region. And plus, there are plans for a big autoclave production over in the Pavlodar region, which is quite an ambitious project, which is supported by the government.
Well, the locals are also the kind of the next part that I wanted to talk about. You've already touched upon it here briefly. How much power do local communities get over their land? Is it used for hunting in one way or another, or farming, or yeah? I mean, how much power do the locals have? How important is it?
According to the new ecological code, before you conduct any kind of exploration or mining activity, you gotta have the local hearings based on the ecological mining code, or ecological code. So they would have to vote, and you have to present them what you're going to be doing, and also what are the social aspects that you're going to be contributing to the local town. And therefore, we see lots of mining companies actually actively building, let's say, kindergartens, some taking obligations to build the schools, or perhaps get involved in the hospital. I mean, this is also comes with many companies actually being ESG compliant. So at the same time, but people do have a, let's say, an influential part in the development of the region over there, because they have their say. It just so happens that with the Pavlodar region, with so many industrial companies, like with the Karaganda region, I mean, they know that the economy and the wealth of the region depends on these industrial companies being successful. And right now, with the sanctions that is happening, let's say, against our neighbors, some of these companies have certain, let's say, vulnerabilities.
When you talk about the sanctions and everything happening, and also that process with the community, I'm also thinking about corruption. Corruption is a fact of life, I think, in every country around the world. How is corruption in Kazakhstan, both within local communities who might have, leaders of the local communities, but also within government?
It's a very, let's say, good question, tough question. There were cases of corruption in Kazakhstan, especially in the past. Right now, with the digitization and with the ability to apply online or deal with the most cases via online mechanisms or platforms, and given that there is AFC as a UK court, it does gives more leverage to the business. And I myself have been involved in AFC legal case, and I must say it was the judge was from United Kingdom, and it was fair. And in this sense, I'm not saying that the Kazakh legal system is in any way so bad, but what I'm saying is, for an investor's point of view, if he wants, he can go and appeal on AFC, and I think it would be a fair rule. In this sense, to our locals, over this political transit that's been taking place over the last few years in Kazakhstan, it's also one of those tests, because they have promised something new. They have promised new programs that it's not going to be like in the old days, and that's why they even proclaim the program. They say it's new Kazakhstan, and therefore we kind of prepare for the worst but hope for the better, in a sense that things are getting better, and we must be openly saying that things are getting better. It's just the external environment is also tough these days, when you have such neighbors from the north, from the east. Of course, we have other neighbors across the Caspian, and we as Kazakhstan, being the 9th biggest country in the world, I mean, over the centuries, we have been very, let's say, careful in mitigating those relationships. And in this way, you see in Kazakhstan, there are multinationals, multicultural, multi-religious, and they all kind of get along with each other.
You live here in Astana, that's right,
Yes.
full time. When you talk about the new Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan 2.0, if you will, after its independence, there's also a surge in organized crime. How is that these days in 2025? What does it feel like? Do you come in touch with it like on a regular basis living here in Astana, or what does it look like?
Organized crime.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest with you, I think Kazakhstan is quite safe. Like in comparison, let's say, to downtown London, downtown New York, and I've been there, I think those places are actually much scarier, especially some of the parts of those, let's say, capitals. In this sense, Kazakhstan is safe. Astana is extremely safe town as well, and as you might walk around and you see there's lots of CCTV as well. And at the same time, any kind of even small cases, they right away become something on the media, like something on the TV, and this is where, like, there is this poll that says lots of Kazakhs, especially young, they want to leave the country. I have lived abroad. I've lived in United Kingdom, in Canada, and I know what it's like and how tough it is to compete out there with many, many other nationals from across the world and with the locals, with professionals. I mean, it is quite a tough environment. While here, some of the people think that, look, it's going to be easy out there. Well, it's not. And therefore, it's actually like, if you compare it in terms of the food basket, the economic scores, like what the country does for you, what the state provides, like I think today Kazakhstan, in terms of its geopolitical, geoeconomical position, is quite a prosperous and has a big potential. At least this is what I believe, and this is why I live here. I raise my kids here. They learn the local Kazakh language over here, and like over the course of these, let's say, next few decades, in terms of the critical minerals race, this is giving Kazakhstan really a big advantage. And in this sense, of course, we need to have a leadership that's quite strong. And in terms of the organized crime and all of this such, well, our official authorities, I would say, they crack down on them, and maybe sometimes even too harsh.
When you're mentioning the minerals potential there, and for a second I remember that I should have asked you about uranium, because Kazakhstan is the largest producer of uranium worldwide. What happens, but it is always state controlled, so there's no foreign companies solely producing uranium. There are JVs with Canadian companies. I do know that. What happens if Arras and stumbles onto uranium without them wanting or knowing that? What happens to the projects in that case?
In terms of the uranium, this is Kazakhstan, let's say, strategic leadership in the world. And in terms of uranium, that 40% of the Kazakhstan uranium comes from the Shu-Sarısu region, that's in the south of Kazakhstan. And why it's strategic is because the cost of production is quite low over there, about $8, $10, $12 per pound, because it's in situ heap leaching, right? While, let's say, in Pavlodar region, I wouldn't think geologically they would find that. That's the most common one. And second of all, when the main concentration is of course in the south of Kazakhstan. So therefore, I don't think Arras has much to worry about. And second of all, I mean, Arras came here in the last 4 years. I mean, all the licenses are picked up according to the law, the current mining code, but I know that their companies, I think they are based on the AIFC, so I mean, they shouldn't be even, I think, a risk or a thought about this. Nonetheless, of course, there are talks of this potential law that's in the making, perhaps, and we don't know what's going to be like the final of that law, the proposed energy bill, where this uranium part is taking place, but I can't comment on that yet because it's not law yet.
Right. What about royalties? I mean, you know, the government wants participation or to control it when it's a uranium deposit. What about if it's not a uranium deposit? Do they get some kind of a royalty that's free carried or anything like that?
The royalty system is something that's very transparent and quite well understood by the Western companies, especially by the Western companies. And this is something that they've been voicing over the years in Kazakhstan, that we have to introduce the royalty system. While in Kazakhstan we have mineral extraction tax, or what we call a MET tax. That one it's more common. It's kind of you see, it's a complex question because it's connected again to the resource and reserve estimation. On one side you have JKZ, old Soviet system, and on the other side you have the Crisco with an I-43-101 with the JORC system. So therefore it's like the royalty system, as we believe, is going to be introduced in the new tax code, which just went through the second hearing over in Parliament and got the approval. However, the royalty system is going to be based only to the licenses. That's new mining code licenses issued, I think, starting from 2027. So therefore, the companies that are right now that are exploring, they're not going to be, I think, at the mining stage at 2027. So therefore, to discuss how it might affect and what will happen, I mean, we right now ourselves are still in the stages, what will this potential new amendments into the tax bill that Kazakhstan is right now debating about and soon is going to be approving, like what will the impacts be for the mining industry. But beforehand, I mean, we were fighting a situation when they were thinking like, for example, to increase the corporate tax to 25%. Like right now, we know it's like, look, it's going to be left at 20%. So they are trying to increase the VAT at the same time. But I mean, they had the idea of like, look, let's increase the VAT to 20% from the current 12. But this is where like we as let's say geological exploration community, Kazakhstan Chamber of Mines kind of said, look, I mean, VAT on exploration, I mean, come on, it's like, you guys should abolish the VAT overall for the explorers by the end of the day.
Yeah, or at all. Amen to that. But what do you think is the biggest risk or challenge? If you had a magic stick and you could solve something within the permitting process, or generally how the government goes about mining and exploration, what would you wave that magic stick at?
It's less government involvement. Because when they say they're gonna be like the principles of yellow pages, if there is a business that's already in the industry, government shouldn't create such a business. Because this sometimes like they say, yes, we're not gonna be involved. Then of course, the price of certain minerals fluctuates right away. Of course, new people come to the government and they come with an idea, well, how about then we have a government interest? And given that we have, let's say, our neighbors, and they transpire those examples where there are only the state companies. And so therefore there's always this kind of debate here in Kazakhstan, should we have state companies or market companies? Well, I strongly believe in the market. I strongly believe that we should have a market economy and therefore like there should be a fair competition. And I think this is like the most important thing that our government should stick to. Like we should have a fair competition, access by the foreign investors, local investors, kind of promote that the local investors and foreign investors build, let's say, junior companies. Like for example, Arras was the first, let's say, good case and genuine, and we need to have many, many more like this in Kazakhstan. And if they will be placing their shares on Toronto Stock Exchange, Australian Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange, that would be the best.
My name is Tim Barry. I'm the CEO of Arras Minerals.
All right, Tim, so why do you think you're the right man for this job?
Well, I think I've earned my stripes as a geologist. So I spent 15 years working in the field, really understanding how to find deposits. And I've spent the last 15 years as the CEO of juniors. So I've managed to have a foot in either camp.
Do you currently work for other companies, or is this your main focus?
So this is my main focus.
Okay. Have you had success before is kind of my next question here. What I'm wondering about is that have you made money for shareholders before, and have you had previous successes?
Yeah, so I used to run a company called, well, actually still run a company called Silver Bull Resources. Prior to a blockade, which is now in arbitration, we defined one of the largest silver, lead, zinc deposits in the world. And I think that the stock was going very well right until the blockade. And I think the spin out of Arras into Kazakhstan here was another opportunity that made some real money for shareholders.
What does that look like? What does your day-to-day look like? What does a CEO do in the first place? What does your job look like?
Well, again, from extensive field experience, I kind of figured out that when you set up in Kazakhstan, you have to be in the country, intimately involved in setting up the program, the team, and organising the in-country affairs, which is one of the reasons why I brought on my partner, Darren Klink, who lives in North America in Vancouver, and he can attend to the North American market. Now we're up and running. We've got a great team on the ground. That's actually freeing me up now to be more involved in the marketing side of things. So between Darren and myself, we're going to be tag teaming the entire globe.
I want to talk about incentives and see how incentivized you are. How many shares of Arras do you own?
How many shares? I'd have to check, but it's about 2% of the company. And then there's options and DSUs on top of that. So I think that's pretty good incentive.
The shares that you own now, were those founder shares from the spin-out, or have you paid for those shares in the market?
Now, paid for in the market. So every private placement the company's done, I've always participated.
What would you guess your average share cost of your shares is?
It's diving into the memories, probably about 60 cents.
Okay. So, okay. Do you personally own a royalty on any of the projects?
No,
Okay. Does anyone within the company own a royalty on any of the projects?
no.
Good. That's how I like it, short and sweet. Would you mortgage your house to drill it? This is about thinking about how aligned you are, but because you're a geologist, that's also part of the question. So if the company had no money, would you mortgage your house to pay for drilling?
Well, I live in a cave, so means the bank won't finance me. Sure, I think it's got to be balanced though with realism. With exploration, there's risk, and I think at the same time you've got to manage risk in your life. So blowing my brains out to drill what I think is a great exploration program or project is probably not the same calculation I'd make to bankrupting myself. So I think you've got to be smart if you're going to run a junior, and the goal is never to get into that point where you have to mortgage your house to drill it.
That's a smart answer, and you do have to be smart. I've tried that; it hasn't worked out for me yet, but maybe the time will come. What do you think, from your perspective, specifically as CEO? What do you think is the biggest risk for Arras right now?
Well, I think the biggest risk now is exploration risk. We're fully financed. We've got the mineral licenses. We've got a great partner with Teck on some of our programs or projects. We own 100% some of our other projects. All have really good targets. It's now will the geology gods prevail and give us a big deposit.
Darren Klink, President and also Director of Arras Minerals.
What do you do? What does your job actually look like?
So as president, work closely. Tim the CEO, we work closely together in terms of managing the overall company and leading the company, strategy, and obviously helping to raise finance and get the word out. And I'm based in Vancouver. Tim's based here in Kazakhstan, and so it's quite kind of a complementary set of skills, I think, for both of us to work together on.
Why do you think you're the right man for this job?
Yeah, good question. Well, my experience really over the last sort of 20 years has been more so with companies that have been developing or actually operating assets as well. So this is, arguably maybe one of the earlier stage opportunities. But when I first came and had a chance to look and come and visit Kazakhstan, I was really blown away by the opportunity. And I think, newer jurisdiction, not one that's well recognized, particularly in the North American markets, but enormous upside potential. And so I think leveraging my experience in the past working with governments, mainly in developing countries, to be honest, and also financial networks as well. In many cases, I think, new parts of the world as well, and sort of, educating people on that. It's, I think it's worked out well. We still got a long ways to go for sure.
Well, I would guess that your job, or I would hope that your job, is to make me as a shareholder some money. Do you have experience in that? Have you done that before? Have you made money for people before?
Sure. Yeah. Good question. Well, I guess probably one way to think about that is, past experiences. Have you made money? Have you had options that have been in the money? And so far, so good. Touch wood every time. But you've got to be a little bit lucky along the way, I think. But yes, previous experience in the space. Worked with Oceana Gold for a number of years. Bluestone Resources prior to this as well, and yes, have had some success, touch wood, so to speak.
You talk about options. I'm also looking for shares. How many shares do you own of Arras Minerals?
Between myself and my wife, I think about 1.2, 1.3 million shares. Those have all been purchased in the market through financings, some through restricted share units as well, as part of compensation. But I've bought shares. My wife or I have bought shares every year since I've been involved. Also participated in financings as well. All the financings that we've done as well, and so it's a fairly significant part of our overall sort of portfolio.
What do you think your average cost of capital is of those shares?
Yeah, probably, I've asked this a few times, probably in and around 60, 65 cents, I think, somewhere in there. So, yeah, we've still got lots of room, I think, to grow.
Do you personally own a royalty on any of the projects that Arras has?
No.
Okay. Do you have another job? Is this the only thing you do full time?
This is 90% of what I do for sure, and it's the main focus. Absolutely.
If the company had no money left, would you mortgage your house to push it forward?
Too late, already mortgaged, and so yeah. I mean, it's a good question. For us, I think probably my mortgage would have been paid off if I wasn't buying shares in the market and participating in financing. So this is a very unique, I think, and important opportunity for our family, and super excited about it. We'll need a bit of luck as well, but we think we're on the right step, and yeah, absolutely not lost on me the risk, but also the opportunity.
I understand you're here to present a bullish story essentially, and show the good parts of the story. But from your perspective specifically, what are still the main outstanding risks or challenges for Arras?
I think, for this stage of company, the biggest thing is that we're in a treasure hunt here, right? It's, what did Mother Nature put in the ground? And it's the geology risk, right? And so, we've done I think a great job moving things along over the last 3.5 years. First company to come in, really from North America, from a junior perspective, to come in and get established, and really been methodical in terms of how we've moved things along from a technical perspective. I think we've done a pretty good job on managing the share structure and the capital structure. At the end of the day, when you're all shareholders, as we all are, I mean, we want to really see that leverage as well, and so investors and management are fully aligned. But it's going to come down to what Mother Nature's put there, and so utilizing all the tools in the tool belt that we potentially can leverage to try and unlock that value, and I think we'd be lying if we didn't say maybe have a little bit of luck along the way as well.
My name is Vladimir Shuluburic. I'm the chief geologist in Arras Minerals.
Why do you think you're the right man for the job?
So my professional experience is mostly last 15 years in the exploration of the epithermal and porphyry type deposits, predominantly in the Serbia Timok region, which is part of the Tethyan magmatic belt. So the porphyries and epithermals is what we are looking for here in Arras, and I think that's a good contribution of having me in the team.
Have you had success in doing that? Like, have you found porphyries before, essentially?
Yeah, so not really the discoveries, lots of technical successes with really good intercepts. Even we were finding I was involved in the projects which had the concealed epithermal environments concealed underneath the 400-meter depth younger rocks. So yeah, I was dealing with lots of geophysical exploration methods that were involved in that project, and lots of other exploration methods.
From your perspective, what do you think is the biggest risk or the biggest unanswered question? Like when you wake up at 3 a.m. at night, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, what will be the next couple of meters? Am I of the drill hole? Am I closing the drill hole? Am I continuing? Is it going to be shiny rocks or some dull stuff?
You're not thinking about sandwiches or anything. I typically think of food when I wake up then.
Maybe coffee first.
One last question, and this is my favorite one because it's the most amusing one, but would you mortgage your house to drill the project if there was no money in the company?
With Arras, definitely yes. We have very, very good prospects and very good chance to find the big deposits here with the Arras licenses.
All right, so stop number one, we're right at a drill. There's a drill. Why is there a drill here in the first place, or maybe show me on the map where we are?
Yes, right now we are at the Bereski Central target. As you see from the footage, it's our outcropping lithocap. With what you're seeing here is the lots of clays that are representing our argillic alteration that we are seeing that is outcropping, and that's where our rig right now it is.
Yeah. Why? What are you looking for here?
So this target we tested last year, and it yielded quite a good copper gold results. This year we are developing the target further with a couple of drill holes that we will put there, and then hopefully we will continue with the good results further to the north, to the Bereski north, and try to connect those two targets, testing these bullseye copper anomalies on the map.
You think there's one thing feeding Bereski North and Bereski Central?
With size of this copper anomaly, probably a couple of the intrusions that are responsible for this geochem signature.
Right. And show me the map, where are we going to stop? So the second stop, third stop, I think we're going to make a couple of stops along this corridor, essentially.
After Bereski Center, we will go to Kejozek. That's where we will see the trenches, outcropping trenches, with the low sulfidation epithermal quartz veins. And after that, we will go to Bereski North, where we will see the location of the drill hole 5.
All right, so where are we standing right now? You said there's some alteration behind you, but set the stage. Where are we kind of in the project?
Right, so we are right now in the Bereski Central target at LMS project. This is where we are putting our first hole this year, right now that we saw. And we are standing on the outcrop of argillic alteration, which we saw in the drill core, the gray looking core with lots of pyrite.
Yeah.
And that's what you will see in the outcrops. After the weathering, pyrite will be oxidized into the iron oxides, giving the hematite and goethite and other iron oxides.
What's this argilling outcrop telling you? Is it telling you system is closer to the surface, or why is this an important feature that you want to show?
Exactly, not just the alteration system, but with the last year drilling, we hit the mineralization right from the surface. So we are in the argillic alteration with a typical epithermal type alteration, argillic kaolinite elite, with that is transitioning by depth to a little bit weaker elite smectite alteration. But still, through the entire drill hole, we are seeing lots of epithermal veins or veinlets, quartz veinlets, with pyrite and also disseminated pyrite in the rock, which is practically carrying the gold that we are seeing in our assays. Together with gold, we are seeing also copper, which is related to the chalcocite that we could see in the core.
So why is the drill not here? I mean, and this is my 75 IQ geologist brain thinking here. So why is the drill not here? Just drill this thing if you know this is where the alteration is.
So right now we are a little bit kind of far away from the moly anomaly, which is coinciding with the copper anomaly. So we are picking up the strongest soil anomaly, multi-element anomaly, and that's where you want your hole to be
Right.
yet.
Okay. There's also this pond here. What's this water? Is that why is it here?
Yeah, it's just rainwater, just accumulated there. Somebody was digging this hole probably for, I don't know what they were using the clay for, but it's just artificial here. It's
They picked up clay. Like this is not artisanal workings of some sort.
no. I don't know what they were using the clay for, but definitely you can see that this is a
Okay.
artificial thing.
And then what about the sediments? I mean, walking here was also kind of interesting. There's these separate rocks just kind of laying around. It's almost, you know, coming from Western Europe, it almost feels like a park that was put up here with these rocks.
Yeah, it looks like. In fact, we have a late or youngest layer of sediment called silicrete, which is kind of silicified pebbles of the beach, because this area was the kind of shallow marine environment, and very young sediments were formed in the delta, that kind of silicrete form.
So
Yeah.
500 million years ago, we would be underwater.
Yes, probably. Yeah.
Okay. All right, Sam. So where are we standing now? I think we took the car up from the drill rig, but what, 2 kilometers? What direction? Where's this?
Yeah, so it's about 2 to 3 kilometres from what we call Berezki Central, which is where we drilled a 261 metre hole at 0.64 copper equivalent in classic porphyry style mineralisation. Where we've come now is a series of old Soviet trenches that were targeting some low sulfidation epithermal veins. And we know they're low sulfidation due to the classic coliform type texture. And in our sampling on this, I think we took around 40 samples and about 22 came back with over 5 grams gold. So we're quite excited about this as a secondary part of the whole epithermal porphyry story at Alamus.
How does this tie into the story again? You're kind of touching upon it there, but this is epithermal. You have a porphyry. They seem to be next to each other instead of on top of each other. Wouldn't it normally be the epithermal overprinting the porphyry, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so it is quite unusual to have porphyry style mineralisation sitting at surface and a low sulfidation epithermal vein at the same level. So that's either telling us there must be some kind of fault between them that's brought the porphyry to surface, or maybe it's a second system. And that question we haven't answered yet.
Yeah. What about the pile of rocks behind you? They look I'm guessing here almost, but they look oxidized. Are they oxidized?
Yeah, they are, and part of that is just the weathering of the rock, but if you actually get in close, you can see weathered out sulfides, so the oxide colour would be the weathered limonite colouring. What's interesting about that is whenever you get sulfides within low sulfidation epithermal veins, you've got to be interested in that.
When are you going to come and drill this?
It'll be part of the drill program this year.
All right, Vlad, so now we're standing at, I can see drill casing behind us, but what is this? What have you drilled here?
Yes, so this is hole number 5 that we drilled last year. We are at the Berezki North target, which is 3 kilometers north from the previous stop we made on the epithermal low sulfidation target, and about 5 kilometers from the Berezki center where we have a drill rig right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So what are we looking at here? You're holding a rock.
Yes.
What are we seeing in this rock?
So this target was this drill hole yield 547 meters of 0.7% copper equivalent, which was bring by the hydrothermal thermaline breccia with lots of sulfides. These sulfides, when outcropping on the surface, they will turn into the iron oxides. So practically what I'm holding in the hand is that's hydrothermal breccia of andesite clasts and iron oxides that were sulfides once they were in the depth.
Why is that important? What's that telling you?
So this is a good indication. First of all, this will give us the good anomaly, soil anomaly, and also this area was trenched historically. So when we sample this rock, it will give us good copper results and gold results.
Right. I did see other casing just a little bit further from here, maybe 100 meters from here. What's that?
Yeah, so those are historical holes that were drilled like during the Soviet time. Yes, so that's how we know that.
What did they drill?
They drill pretty much the same thing, but what we wanted to do is what really is and how deep is the system that they drilled. And we've been very successful because we punched through the hydrothermal breccia, thermaline hydrothermal breccia, and ended up in the andesites that were carrying the quartz porphyry style veins.
Did it end in mineralization?
Yes.
And so would you stop drilling? When should you keep going?
Well, simply we were not at that point aware of those veins will carry that kind of gold grades, and also the limitation of the drilling at that time.
Yeah. What about, I mean, how deep do you want to go? I know you're a geologist, so you probably want to go 2
Deep as-
kilometers deep,
yeah,
as deep as
yeah,
it gets.
yeah.
But how deep do you think it gets, or how deep are you going to go?
Yeah, it all depends on the targets and the economics.
Right.
Yeah.
So money. Okay.
Exactly.
So how much is drilling costing you here? Do you know that? When you go
Here,
deep?
drilling will be around $115 per meter,
Yeah.
which is quite cheap comparing
Okay.
to the other places in the world.
And you're going to drill that this year again?
Yes, we will test the different concepts and the concepts that we had from the last year drilling.
Awesome. Okay. So we've driven actually quite a while. How long is this? Like 45 minutes-ish from the last stop?
Yes, so we are right now in the Imandai license, which is that parallel trend with LMS, where we have this huge copper anomaly in soils. And right now we are standing in the historical exploration pit, where we can see lots of malachite, which is copper oxide, outcropping on the surface. So this particular spot is the area which we didn't cover last year with the soil samples. We are intending to do that this year. But very good indication having this malachite that there is probably another parallel trend of copper anomaly to the Imandai copper anomaly that we have.
I saw some blue. That's azurite, I'm assuming. What does that tell me?
Yes, different types of oxides,
Okay.
of copper oxides. Yeah.
But it's all conclusive to there's copper mineralization here.
Exactly.
You just don't know where it is or how
Exactly.
deep or whatever.
So these copper oxides were using the fractures. They are immobilized from somewhere, which is a good indication, and we just need to figure out where is it coming from.
Right. And when are you going to come here and drill? How much are you going to drill? What's that profile?
So
gonna look
this particular target right now we don't know much. We didn't do the soils here. We'll cover it with the soils this year. But for the Imandai soil copper anomaly, we are expecting the results of the vector IP, and according to that, we will do the drill plan.
Okay, so that's for next year then.
Probably this year.
Okay.
Yep.
You're gonna come back to drill this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, Tim. So this is the Imandai target. I was just talking to Vlado about it, but I couldn't help but notice you're very close to that coal mine. Like, what would that be? A couple of kilometers, really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for you? What are the implications of having them as a neighbor?
Well, I think it's ultimately a good thing because we're completely on our mineral license, but we're beside a waste dump that's probably 3 to 4 billion tons. That's the Bogota coal mine. It's the 5th largest coal mine in the world. And I think what it demonstrates is permitting waste dumps is probably not going to be a problem.
What about the water that we're seeing over there? Is that a natural lake or what's that thing?
It's a good question. I think some of it's natural, but mostly I think it's man-made and created by berms coming off from the waste dump there.
It's not some sort of a protected recreational thing or something. It's really it's there to serve the mine then, or how does that work?
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, what we're finding is they'll put a lot of drainage in the area immediately surrounding the waste dump, and they'll pull the water for commercial uses.
Yeah, and the power lines that run here, are they operational, or is that something back from the Soviet time, or what is that for?
It depends. Some of them are old and probably lead to nowhere and just haven't been taken down. But the coal mine is servicing 7.5 gigawatts of power in the immediate area, which actually represents 40% of Kazakhstan's power generation. So a lot of the main power lines actually head south to the main cities in Kazakhstan.
I also noticed some animals that were kind of antelope-looking animals running kind of across your package. What kind of animals are that?
So there's an unusual looking antelope called a sagar, which is a species of antelope that 20 years ago was on the endangered list, but thankfully now it's coming back with full vengeance, that it's now completely off the endangered list, and you actually find it quite abundant across the entire steppe.
So that that wouldn't be a problem then for you operating, and if you found something to have a mine here, it's not something that the government's going to be like, not at all.
Well, not at all, and I think the coal mine right beside us here speaks to that. As you know, Kazakhstan has a very strong national park system and a protected area system. We're nowhere near any of that, and you know, these are just migratory animals that are running across the steppe.
Yeah, we also saw a sheep herder, if I'm not mistaken. It was a guy on a horse. It was kind of far away though, and he had little animals, I suppose. So I'm assuming it was sheep.
Well, it's a mix. I mean, traditionally the Kazakhs used to farm horses, and that used to be the main part of their diet. And in recent times, you're seeing more sheep farming coming into the mix, and beef. So Kaz beef is becoming sort of like Alberta beef in Canada. It's becoming a brand, and I have to say is not too bad.
Having people graze their sheep on your project, though, could that be a problem? I'm just trying to figure out from an ESG perspective, does it work essentially? So that's why I'm asking all that.
Sure. So the way it works in Kazakhstan is the government owns the land. A lot of the farmers are either nomadic and they just move across the steppe according to the weather and the grass. And then occasionally you'll get people who lease the land off the government. And we're sort of in a situation where if we were to find a mine, we would have a mechanism and a right to turn that into a deposit. But the owner of that land would obviously get compensation. So that's something that I think will get worked out over time, exactly what that compensation looks like. But I think it's stock standard around the world that, you know, a mine is something that can't be moved, where a sheep farmer or a grazer, they can move.
That's a fair point. What about a road? We came in here from our previous stop. It was about a 45-minute drive-ish, I would say, on a dirt road. How far are we away from a normal paved road?
Well, I mean, the normal paved road is about 4 kilometres that way.
Okay.
And then the town that we came from is 10 kilometres past the waste dumps there. So, you know, very close.
Putting in a road would not be a major challenge, that's what you're saying?
No, very much so. And in fact, the beauty of exploration here is on the steppe is, you know, if you need to go there, you can pretty much drive directly to where you need to be.
We're now standing actually close to the Bojiko mine, which is, I see it says right here. And these are your licenses, I assume, that you're working with tech. Where are you working on right now?
Yeah, so this large blue feature here, the big magnetic low, you're looking at the mag map of the region, represents the Boshikol deposit. And you can see there's a very strong northeast-southwest trend. So what we've staked up in this area is basically the extension of the Boshikol mine to the north, as well as a parallel trend that's also on that same northeast-southwest trend. And you can see our sort of anomalies as we move along are all sort of following that same feature. So what we think we have here is two quite distinct trends with a proven deposit of the Boschekol mine sitting right here. And the plan this summer is very much to drill 3 or 4 of these targets and test their potential.
Where are you drilling right now?
So right now we're actually on a different license to the south called Bishoki is the target that we're drilling here, and we expect to have the drill rig up here in a couple of months.
Right. What would you be looking for here? These because I see porphyry targets, VHMS targets, nickel targets, epithermal. That's a lot of stuff. So what is it that you're really looking for here?
Well, the primary focus, and especially with Teck, is copper porphyries. We're a little different in that we're also very interested in epithermal gold, which is obviously not Teck's mandate, though it'll be a business decision if we find one for them, whether they wish to continue or not. But I think that just speaks to the geology that we've got here, as the nickel represents sort of, I guess, ancient sea floor, which is typically high in nickel, and then epithermal and porphyry targets are very closely associated.
What happens if, with the drilling with Teck, if they don't find a porphyry but something else? Would they move on, or what happens to your partnership?
Well, that would be entirely their decision. So, you know, obviously we'd like them to stay and continue, but, you know, they're a big company and their focus is very much big deposits.
I also can help but notice that there's a highway kind of going through the land package here at some point. What's that mean to you? Like, if there's something it's the other licenses, what are the other parts of the licenses that we haven't talked about? But what happens if there's something on these licenses here?
Well, same thing. I mean, this whole package is actually part of the Teck Strategic Alliance. So, you know, what we find there is obviously going to fall under our strategic alliance and eventually a joint venture.
Right. Okay. But in terms of having the highway in there, could that be a problem for you?
No, in fact, I'd say it's if it is a problem, it's a good problem to have. You know, that again just speaks to the overlying theme that this whole license package has, which is infrastructure. So in addition to the highway that's very close by, we've got the power, we've got railway, we've got Eki Bastus is very close. So it's yeah, I would rather have that kind of infrastructure close by than not at all.
Yeah, that's fair. So what is Tay? It looks like a kind of a small-ish licenses relative to the other ones. What's that?
Yeah, the reason that we staked Tay was, you can see this is the Boschekol chargeability high, or chargeability anomaly that the Soviets identified. And you can see by the colour, the similar colours up in Tay, we identified again on an old Soviet map a very similar chargeability anomaly to what we saw at Boschekol. We have actually drilled this target. We put one hole into it. We're still working through the results, and we expect to have that out to the market hopefully in the next month or so. But I think more than anything, and I guess that what we can say right now, is it just speaks to being an opportunist in this part of the world. Is when you go through this old Soviet data, you can uncover some real gems, and you know, if you can, stake them and test them.
All right, Tim. So, what is this where we? Well, I see core boxes, so I know it's kind of your core storage, but
Well, this is actually our core logging area. So this is where the geologists mostly spend their summers. We discovered that they don't make geologists like they used to, and so when winter kicks in, they started complaining about it being too cold. So we've actually got two core logging areas. So this is summer, and our core logging area for winter is in another building over there.
So now you got to put a roof above their head? Spoiled.
I know.
Spoiled.
It's they just don't make them like they used to.
What's inside? Are we going inside?
Yeah, so
Okay.
in here is our core logging area. So one of the things I find is poorly done is companies mistreat their core. You know, they spend millions of dollars acquiring the actual core itself, and then they spend nothing on the actual storage. We don't have that problem here. It's a very cheap storage area, and we keep it out of the weather and safely stored and well organised.
So you're spoiling your geologists and your core.
It pays to be a driller here. So
That's all core boxes?
this is all core boxes. So we've right now got about 80,000 metres of historical core in here,
In here.
and it's all well organised and stored out of the weather.
Who does all that work?
So we've got a very talented young man by the name of Anatoly, who's from Ekibastuz, and the organisation and building of all of this was done by him. A favourite of Kazakhs is QR codes. So each QR code will tell you what's in each shelf and where in each shelf you can pick out a core box. So it's very easy to find the stuff that you need to find in this area.
That's all your drilling, or is it Soviet drilling as well?
Well, about half of it is from the Muskoka project, which we've got an option to purchase on, and then the other half is our drilling. So on Muskoka, Alamis, and then some other prospects.
These QR codes, they essentially, they if I scan it, it's going to show me a bunch of drilling data. I assume, is that all public? Is it on your website, or how do you make that choice?
Well, it's just what's stored in the shelf. So if we want to pull out a box of a specific drill hole or a piece of core, you know, as you can see, we've got hundreds of boxes in here now. We know where to find it.
Okay, so it's just for you to use it. Oh, it keeps going.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is all. It's all in the same. It's just core boxes upon core boxes.
And so it's actually quite impressive when you think about it. There's 80 kilometres worth of drill core in here.
It is impressive. Is this? I mean, this is only my second site visit, so I don't actually know how it is. But is it? Oh, is this typical? Is it always like organized like that?
No.
So you said it gets mistreated.
You know, when I'm looking at a new project, one of the things I look at is the organisation of their data and the organisation of their drill core. And if both are a mess, I actually view that as a positive, because it means there's an opportunity there that they've probably missed other things.
Interesting. What about, and so what's that? That's all core boxes. Just they keep going that way too, or what's over there?
Yeah, so we're building new shelves now to accommodate this year's drill program. So you can kind of see the shelves being built, and we've probably got room in here for another 25,000 metres of drill core.
Okay. What about after that? What happens to it all?
As part of this complex, we've actually got another warehouse of equal size. So,
Okay.
and there's really nothing in there right now.
You're not going to run out of space.
Not in the near term.
And so shelves and everything, like you build in-house, because I can, or is it because I can see a welding machine over there? I think.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of being in a town like Ekibastuz was everyone seems to know how to weld, and so our team is able to put together some spectacular shelving. And if you wanted to dive into the intricacies of welding, they can they can take you through it. They're very proud of. They're very, well, let me put it another way, they're very judgmental of my welding. But the other thing we do is any sample that gets sent to the lab, we make sure we collect the reject from the lab and store that also. So if we want to reanalyze a piece of core or do some metallurgical work, we've already got the sample ready to go here.
Does that typically not happen? Like, would companies not store that?
It's kind of good practice, but you know it takes up room, and if you're already struggling for space, you know, a lot of companies just chuck out the reject.
Okay, that's also all the wine boxes too.
Yeah, so this is the historical stuff before our time, and then this is the stuff that we've stored.
Okay, and then on the outside is the core boxes that are laid out there. We're gonna, I'll talk to Vlado, I suppose your geologist, about what's in there. That's some of your recent holes then?
It's a mix.
Okay.
We've got some of the drill holes from Muskoka, and then of course some of the drill holes from our recent drill program at Arras.
Okay. What's in here? I can see a table for table tennis, so I'm already starting to get excited.
So this is one of our rooms that we, particularly when we're doing soils, you know, we took 55,000 soil samples last year, so we actually need a pretty big area to organise them, and then we've got a process of XRFing them, so portable X-ray analysis of the sample itself. And so this is one of the rooms we use. And this isn't a table tennis table, this is a map table.
Who's the table tennis champion of Arras right now? Who's the best?
Well, I see Vlado isn't here, so me.
Okay, let's go and look at some of the core that Vlado's preparing for us. So we did the tour of the core facility, and now we're actually going to look at some of the rocks. What is it that you want to show me here?
Yes. So we are looking here at the hole 1 from the last year at LMS that we drilled at LMS Bereski Central Target. This is hole with this very significant results that we got that yield around 200 meters of 0.64% copper equivalent. And what you can see in the core is nice argillic alteration that is described by kaolinite, presence of kaolinite, elite, and smectite alteration minerals, but also the nice epithermal type quartz pyrite chalcopyrite veins.
Is this are you only showing me the best stuff, or do you have a lot of this core? Is this what a lot of the core that you have looks like, essentially?
Yes, pretty much entire hole is like this, with of course in some places it's a little bit better mineralization, which is normal for the epithermals and for the porphyry environment at all.
To a non-geologist, what this looks like to me is I essentially see three things. I see the gray stuff, I see the dark gray stuff, almost blackish, and then I see a little bit of white veining. What is all that? What's just the gray stuff that we see in here?
So gray greenish stuff is the host rock, which is mapped as a diorite. This is altered diorite, where the feldspars will be the grayish or white minerals, while the green are the mafic minerals that are turned into a smectite after the alteration, and which has that kind of green color. And then the most important thing is we are seeing the quartz veins, which are typical epithermal black quartz veins with the presence of pyrite, a little bit of chalcopyrite inside.
Black quartz, you say?
Yes.
But what's the
Dark
significance
quartz,
of
yeah.
that?
So it's a different style of the quartz, which is typical for the epithermals, and it of course depends on the acidity of the environment and alteration. While in the deeper, well-formed porphyry quartz veins, we will see the typical white quartz, and these veins can be A, B type, D type veins.
Okay. The little white veins that we see on here, that's then quartz too, or what is it?
In the veins, yeah.
Yeah. And then this over here.
Yes, so these are carbonate veins.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the significance of carbonate veins?
They are usually late, and they are not. They sometimes they can carry some grades, but in our case they are not carrying. They are very late post mineral.
Right. And then now we're gonna go over there and look at some darker core, I think.
Yes, that's the hole number 5 from Bereski North.
This is starting to look different. So I'm seeing more colors, sulfides, darker colors. What am I looking at?
Yes, so we are looking at the core from hole number 5 that's coming from Bereski North target. And this is where we reported 547 meters of 0.7% copper. And we were quite excited with this hole because of the grades, but also because of the geological implications that this drill core give answers to. We drilled through thermaline hydrothermal breccia, which is a good indicator for the porphyry systems. But the most significant thing is that we punched through that thermaline breccia and ended up in the porphyry style, typical porphyry style mineralization. So we are quite excited about this target, and this year we will definitely going to develop it further with a couple of new drill holes there.
Well, okay, so walk me through the core. Let's look at the core itself. So the orange-ish stuff, what's that?
Yes. So obviously the most shiny thing is chalcopyrite, massive chalcopyrite. Yeah. Then we are looking at the dark black fluidized tourmaline, which is that tourmaline alteration we are talking about within the tourmaline breccias. Significance of that tourmaline is that it's a boron-rich mineral, and to have the boron in the system, you need to have connection with the porphyry intrusions, because they are requiring the high temperatures. Along with that, it's very complicated alumosilicate mineral with a very complex chemical formula.
How much of the rest of the core looks like this? I mean, same question as I'd ask you with
Yes.
one.
From the top all the way to around 300 meters, we are looking at the tourmaline hydrothermal breccia, quartz tourmaline hydrothermal breccia. And then further to the depth, we are looking at the solid diorites with the quartz porphyry type veins.
So essentially you want to find more of this, more of the shiny stuff.
Well, exactly. We are interested in tourmaline breccia, but particularly we are interested in the source of that. So that's that quartz porphyry style veins that we are seeing on the bottom of the hole.
Right. Okay. What else? What else is important to look at in terms of the core? You've got a lot of it. We can spend days probably going through everything here. But what else is important here?
Yeah. So the host rock is different andesites of different composition. Alteration is going from top to bottom with the tourmaline, then transitioning in the tourmaline quartz, and finally tourmaline quartz hematite dusting. Hematite dusting is part of the alteration systems where hematite will be introduced with hematite-rich or iron-rich fluids, which will come between white mica books and be precipitated there, and then that iron from that hydrothermal fluids will give that kind of red staining. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we are very excited with this core and the grades that we are getting from the Bereski North.
All right, and maybe one last thing before we leave. Passing by this looks important to me as well, because there seems to be a lot of veining. Is that of significance, or what is this core, or what hole is this?
Definitely, this is core coming from Beskauga deposit, which is 111 million tons of 0.5 gram per ton gold and 0.3% copper. And this hole is hole number 6, which we are very proud of. It yield 400 meters of 0.9% copper equivalent. And here in this core, you can see the type of the mineralization that we are seeing in the Beskauga main. You can see the lots of quartz veins, mainly A-type veins with some B-type veins.
What's the significance of that? I'm sorry for interrupting here, but I see that a lot, A, B-type veins. I see it across news releases when it comes down to porphyry exploration. What's the significance for you?
Yeah, so we call them vein generation. differentiation of vein generations. A veins are usually early stage veins, which will form while the magma is still mushy. And that's why they have this kind of wavy, wormy type appearance. They can carry grades also. B-type veins are the usually forming just around the porphyry itself, and they can carry quite a good grades. And they are carrying actually good grades. The difference is that they are reopened, and then you will see the central suture filled with the sulfides in the B-type veins.
Yeah. What about the mineralogy here? What's important in the rocks?
Yes, so we are looking at the diorites that are hosting the quartz pyrite, chalcopyrite veins, but also we are seeing some energite and chalcocite in the upper portions of the hole.
Okay. And that's it. Anything else that I'm forgetting about this hole? What else is important in it?
Yeah, so that's the Beskoga main, but we also have Beskoga Central and Beskoga South targets that are 1 kilometer and 3 kilometers further to the south. And we are hoping to get similar or not better, if not better, mineralization in those three targets. We still are, there is still lots of space in the Beskoga main where we didn't put the holes. So our future exploration will be targeting those places.
Looking at it from afar, I don't see much much of sulfides.
Yes.
Is that something I should be seeing, or would you like it to be in
Yes,
there?
with the hand lens you will see lots of disseminated pyrite, chalcopyrite, but most of the pyrite and chalcopyrite are in the veins,
Okay.
quite fine grained.
Okay. All right, Tim. So I actually thought we were done with the other facility, which is what, 100 meters away that way. So this is right next door to it. But there seems to be a lot of work happening here too. There's core, there's compute. What's going on?
Yeah, so we sort of figured out after the first winter here, logging outside was not conducive to actually getting things done. So we've also got an inside logging area which allows us to drill all year round. And this is the inside portion, which we've got our geologists working in here now. So
Is that what it looks like when they're working, or are they just pretending for the cameras?
no, they're technically working. Certainly Vlado is. And so the way it works, we've got a bit of a system here. As the core gets delivered into this door, put on the tables, and this is where we do our geoteching, our logging, the measurements on orientated structures, etc. We then come over here and we do density on the rock, which is ultimately going to be important for the mining phase. It's just a piece of information we collect, as well as magnetic susceptibility, so we can correlate it to airborne mag data. Once the rock is being processed and logged, it then goes on a trolley and comes through to here, where we've got a what's called a terraspec, or it's a hyperspectral device that looks for alteration. So the rocks get analysed for alteration. And then over here is where we take photos of the core. So this is a pretty good example. And the secret to taking good photos of core is you've got to get the lighting exactly the same for each photo. And typically we'll wet the core down as well, so we'll get a dry photo and then a wet photo of the same core box. And the utility of that is the high quality photos we take means we don't have to pull the core out every time we want to look at it. If something interesting comes up, we can bring up the photo, check it on the photo first, and then decide if we want to pull the core out accordingly. So once it's been photographed, it gets prepped for sampling.
Oh, this is where the core gets cut.
Yes.
Then okay. This is where the magic happens.
So This is a soundproof room, so there's nobody here to hear you scream. And this is where the core gets cut in half and before it gets sampled.
So on bad market days, you go in here so that no one can hear you scream.
Once the core's cut, it comes over here onto the table and is sampled, ready to go to the lab. And so we've got a team that'll come through and they'll take half the core, bag it, sample ID it, and then we put it over there, ready to be shipped to the lab.
This is what goes to the lab then?
Yeah.
And then they give you some of the stuff back, and that's the boxes that you showed me earlier.
That's right, yeah.
Right. How many people do you employ? I mean, there's like 10 people in here, maybe even something like that.
Yeah, so we've got a total of 33 staff, and out of that 33 staff, 22 are from the town of Ekibastuz. And so we've trained everyone up, and I think we've got an exceptional team now. And the reason why we've got 22 locals, we're probably overstaffed for having 2 rigs turning, but when the time comes that we increase our production to maybe 3 or 4 drill rigs, we've already got the people in place, we've got the team working, and we can do that easily without any delay.
All right, Tim, so we've seen it all, I think, or I hope I've seen most of it, at least, probably not all. And we talked about the potential size of this thing. How much more drilling do you think you're going to have to do, though, before you actually prove up something of significance here?
Well, the short answer is a lot. Porphyries are notorious in that you've got to find them, and then it takes a lot of drilling to actually define them. However, what we are fortunate is that we're in Kazakhstan, so we're drilling for $100 a metre, $140 a metre all in. So your bang for the buck in terms of actual drill costs is immense, and that does allow you to find something through exploration and then develop it relatively cheaply.
How high do you think the probability is that you can make it happen with the money you have in the bank right now, essentially never having to raise capital again?
Well, we're sitting there with 19 million Canadian in the bank. That gets you a lot of meters in terms of exploration drilling. So if it's there, I think we'll make the discovery with what we've got in the bank. Ultimately, when you move down the track and into full resource definition, we'll need more money to do that.
At what stage does your business plan become viable? And that might be front running my own questions here, but let's maybe talk then about the business plan first. Like, what is the business plan? You make a discovery, you grow it, you push for production yourself, or are you looking to sell it?
Well, all answers are on the table. So, our model is we're very much an exploration company. We like to find things, add value, and then sell it to a miner who wants it more than we do. But equally, if we have to bring a group in as a joint venture partner, or any machination thereof, that's something we consider. One thing I can tell you is my background is not mining, and it's exploration. And exploration is a very different skill set to mining. So if we ever did push down the mining path, then we'd have to put an appropriate person in place to take on that.
If someone was to buy it off of you and looking at what you hope to find and define here, or the profile of a potential ore deposit here, who do you think it fits with? Like, what's the type of company that would typically develop these things in this part of the world?
I think it's anywhere from a mid-tier to a major copper producer, and they're all here. You've got companies like First Quantum, Polymetal, Kaz Minerals, all the way up to companies like Rio Tinto, all living and working here in Kazakhstan.
So you don't necessarily think that it has to be tech, given their involvement in the ownership of your shares, as well as their involvement in the project on the project level?
No, well, certainly the projects we've got a joint venture with Tech on are obviously they're our partner, and we've got a very good relationship with Tech. I have to say they're easily the best major I've dealt with in my career. So, if Tech really liked one of our 100% owned projects, we'd of course be very interested in talking to them on that.
Looking at your share structure the way it is now, there's a lot of large chunks that are owned by people that are probably not willing to sell. I mean, there's Tech at 9.9, there's Sprott at 9.9, there's a lot of institutions. Do you feel like there's room for more strategics? Like if another copper miner, mid-tier major came in, could you facilitate their entry into the Arras story?
Yes, absolutely. We're so 60% of the company is owned by retail. So what I like about that is that there will always be trading on the stock, so it's not going to be locked up with non-sellers. And if another company did want to come into the project and did want to make an investment, we're absolutely listening.
Yesterday you told me that you have enough money now to go you 2 years, essentially. If I come back here in 2 years, what would you like to show me in order for you to consider it a success?
I'd like to show you at least one significant discovery that's moving ahead with moving towards resource definition, probably starting our metallurgical program, and of course at this point we'd be also starting to think about, if this does become a mine, what are the logistics around it? So where does the power come from? What's water starting to look like? Quite frankly, we already know the answers to a lot of those questions, but it'll be a case of solidifying it around the actual discovery.
I've asked you a lot of questions. I've tried to be as annoying as a ginger with a weird European accent can, and I think I've done a good job at being annoying at least. But what have I not asked you? What do you think I should have asked you? What's something else that you would have told me or showed me if I had an extra week?
Well, I think you could ask me to summarize what, in a succinct way, what is the value proposition of Arras?
The elevator pitch, give it to me.
I think we're, for whatever reason, we've ended up in a situation where we've got a very large land position in one of the last great porphyry belts of the world that hasn't really been explored with modern techniques. We're in a great country that's opened up its mining law to be that of Western Australia. It's got a modern licensing system, it's got excellent infrastructure, well-trained people, and a government that actually wants mining to happen. And based on the work we've done to date, we've managed to raise enough capital to really push our projects forward. And I think two of the projects already are emerging as potential game changers for the company.
And this has been Tim Berry of Arras Minerals. Tim, thank you so much for your time and for walking me around, and thank you for the good food, and you should thank your cook for me. Everything is great. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."